All right. Hello, David Gregory. Tell people out there about what your documentary Enter the Clones of Bruce is all about.
It's about the phenomenon of movies that flooded the market after the death of Bruce Lee. Basically, there was this desire created to see kung fu movies with Bruce Lee. And when Enter the Dragon came out, he was already deceased. And so all of a sudden, there was this gap. Hong Kong producers, Taiwanese producers decided that they needed to fill this gap. So what do? They go looking for a replacement for Bruce Lee. Now, rather than looking for the next star, they needed an actual person to play Bruce Lee. So they found and created artists like Bruce Lee, Dragon Lee, Bruce Leung, and various others that were essentially there to kind of trick audiences into believing that they were watching the actual Bruce Lee. And there was about 500 of these movies, all told, in about a decade after the death of Bruce Lee.
Geez Louise. And do you have a favorite Bruce Lee imitator, let's say?
That's hard to say. I mean, I like them all for various different reasons. I like Bruce Lee because he wanted to do it like really seriously. He wanted to pay his respects to Bruce Lee, even though the producers of his films maybe weren't quite so conscious of that. Dragon Lee I like a lot, but just because he's a huge exaggeration of Bruce Lee. He's a very muscular guy who puts on these ridiculous over-the-top faces, which Bruce Lee did as well, but he does it times 10. And then Bruce Lee is probably the best martial artist of the lot of them. And he too, I mean, they were all admirers of Bruce Lee, so they all wanted to honor the legacy of Bruce Lee, even if the producers didn't.
And you're doing some events with Bruce Lee, correct?
Indeed, we're bringing Bruce Lee over for screenings in LA, San Francisco, Austin, and New York at the Alamo Draft Houses there. We're showing the documentary Enter the Clones of Bruce. And then in a couple of the territories, LA in particular, we're showing some of his films, which he will introduce. And he hasn't been to the US in 40 years, so this is quite an exciting trip.
Sounds like a big event.
Yeah.
What do you say maybe that some of these guys, even though they're kind of crass knockoffs, are they like better than Bruce Lee in any sense in terms of acting, maybe?
It's hard to say better than Bruce Lee
Right,
because he's
right.
basically such an icon, and we had so few movies of his before he died. And of course, it was a complete surprise that he died. You don't expect, the healthiest specimen on the planet to drop dead all of a sudden. So I don't know. I don't know that anyone could say that they touch on the actual iconography of Bruce Lee, but certainly these films actually are unique in their own right. I mean, in the history of exploitation films, there isn't anything like this. I mean, there isn't a situation where they took a star and basically imitated him. I mean, I guess the closest you get is like Elvis impersonators, but that's, very different in terms of that's not a cinematic thing. Whereas they were actually trying to make movies that were commercial entities and could be distributed throughout the world. So they had to really kind of go for it to try and make something unique and different. And they did. I mean, basically, the Clones movies actually started out mainly as biopics about Bruce Lee because so little was known about him when he died and people were fascinated. But then it evolved into like sequels and prequels and spin-offs of the actual movies that he did make, sequels to The Big Boss and Fist of Fury and things like that. Some of them very unofficial, and a couple of them actually quite official. And then it just went into kind of weird territory where they just basically like, we've got to come up with something new, like that, like the Clones of Bruce Lee, where they actually have 3 or 4 different Bruce Lees created by a mad doctor who go and fight. Or The Dragon Lives Again, where he's in purgatory and he has to either team up with or fight the likes of Dracula and Laurel and Hardy, The Godfather, The Ex,
Jesus
The
Christ.
Man with No Name. It goes into some pretty wild territory.
Oh my God. And a lot of these movies are going to be available in the Game of Clones, Bruceploitation Collection Volume 1, which is up for
Correct.
pre-order now. So how many
Correct.
hours of entertainment are people going to get from that?
Well, there's the documentary. There's 12 movies, or
Ooh,
if you order it directly from Severin Films, there's 14 movies because we have a bonus disc that goes with the direct orders, and there's over 24 hours of special features. So it's a very packed box set. So anyone who knows Severin's box sets, like the Black Emmanuel set or
oh my
the
God.
Milligan
Yeah.
and Al Adamson and the folk horror box set knows that we don't skimp when we're doing our box sets. There's a lot of entertainment to be had in there.
It's no joke. I'm getting through all the Haunts BRs right now, and it like clear cut. That took me like 3 days to get through. Like pretty engaged as well. Like
Yeah.
commentary tracks, short films, commentary tracks on short films,
Yep.
lots of great stuff.
Yeah, I mean that one in particular, which Kayla Janice curated. I mean, you don't just get stuff about the movie itself that's on the disc. She will curate those short films, which thematically have a connection to the main feature on the disc. So you really are getting a nice smorgasbord
Oh
of
yeah.
materials there.
Yeah, it's very rewarding. You watch a film, you watch a short. It's great. So there's also a bundle. I think it's sold out, correct?
Sold out, yes, yeah. So
That's
we like to do these bundles,
right.
which because during the course of our finding the licensors and finding film materials and things like that, things pop up like original one sheet posters. So we had a bunch of Dragon Lee one sheet posters from the 80s. We had the free Son of Dragon Bruce Lee poster that was given out in 1974 when the Green Hornet came out, which was basically it wasn't even a Green Hornet movie. It was episodes of the Green Hornet where they edited together action scenes from the TV show The Green Hornet, which Bruce Lee was famously the co-star of. He was a supporting actor in it, but they made it into a Bruce Lee feature, a very successful Bruce Lee feature. So things like that we like to include in our bundles, but there's only a finite amount of stuff that units that we can do. So we put those on sale, and once they're gone, they're gone.
Right. There was like 400, and I
That's
think,
right.
and there was a cassette, which
Yes.
looked pretty cool. Tell me about the tracks of that cassette.
Well, two of the movies, The Dragon Lives and Goodbye Bruce Lee, His Last Game of Death, had theme tunes, which were very catchy theme tunes of the 70s. He's a Legend, He's a Hero was the one for The Dragon Lives. And The King of Kung Fu, which also features in my documentary, was the song from Goodbye Bruce Lee. And so because we licensed King of Kung Fu for the documentary, we thought it would be a waste not to put it out on its own as a single, but it has to be a cassette single with a free digital download because vinyl just takes too long to press. Unfortunately, we wouldn't have had it done in time. So it's a single with the free digital download.
Fair enough. And also, you guys are selling, I don't know if it's still in stock, this bad boy.
Yes, these Fist Break Bricks is Chris Pajali and Grady Hendrix's,
Oh, yeah.
which came out last year, and Chris Pajali actually was very helpful in the documentary and features in the extras of the box set.
Oh,
An absolute wealth of knowledge when it comes to US distribution of exploitation movies. We featured him in other extras of ours, like we did one for Dr. Butcher MD where we walked down 42nd Street with him and Roy Frumpkins talking about where all the old movie theaters used to be. And Chris Pajali and Roy just gave a bunch of backstory on all these individual cinemas, which used to show the grime on 42nd Street. So anyway,
the
yes, that
deuce.
book we
Yeah.
had a bunch of copies of that. The first edition of that, it's now in its second edition, which is altered. So that's the kind of the last of the first edition, I think.
It's a great coffee table book. I'm not going to flip through the pictures for this interview, but it's a lot of fun just to show a friend, flip through it for 2 minutes. Lots of fun.
One
And
of the cool things
yeah,
about this particular subgenre is that a
yeah.
lot of the exploitation happened in the marketing. So basically, the
Right, right.
movie posters were used to basically lure people in, as movie posters are. But in this case, they were particularly audacious. That changing the titles to things like The Real Dragon or changing Sonny Chiba's name to Sonny Bruce. Or in that, most notoriously in the case of the death of Bruce Lee, they actually had a picture of Bruce Lee lying in state on the poster. which actually got withdrawn because that was a step too far. But there was no stone that they wouldn't leave unturned to get people into the cinemas to watch, a faux Bruce Lee movie. And so there's a bunch of posters in that book. There's also Michael Worth's book, which is called Martial Art, which
Right.
Michael Worth is the guy who's the Bruceploitation expert, the world's #1 Bruceploitation expert. He just has a huge collection of these materials. So he actually created a book which is available as well called Martial Art. And then we also have a 100-page book in with the box set, which also has essays by Pajali, Michael Worth, other people talking about this phenomenon, also heavily illustrated with a lot of this artwork.
Very cool. And in these Fist Break bricks, there's a very solid section on Bruceploitation. And
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Severin is credited. Were Severin people involved in that part of the book?
Yeah, kind of latterly, I was, and only in a minor way. I mean, I was consulting with Chris, I think, when he was putting the finishing touches on the book. I can't remember what the specifics were, but yeah, they had. I mean, that's the thing, is that it actually even goes further than in the documentary. That you have people like Brute Lee, and Bronson Lee is mentioned in the documentary, but we don't actually go into detail about him. There's a little bit more information in these Fist Break bricks.
Very nice. And so we were talking about the Game of Clones, Bruceploitation Collection, Volume 1. And that, when it says Volume 1, that kind of leads me to believe there's going to be at least a Volume 2. How many volumes are we thinking right now?
Well, there's no shortage of these movies, so it really depends how well it does. I mean, we
Correct.
definitely have enough movies to do a volume 2 and then some. So basically, what decided what was going in volume 1 was it had a lot to do with like which films were finished, which films we had the film elements ready to scan and restore. Because the other thing about these movies is that it's very hard to find film elements on low budget Hong Kong produced action movies. They, for some reason, they didn't maintain their film elements in the same way they do in, say, Italy or Spain or other countries. They basically were, once they'd had their initial exploitation and these fly-by-night companies weren't paying the lab bills anymore, they basically destroyed the elements. So there's very few film elements.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is definitely a Volume 2, but possibly 17.
Yes, correct.
Cool. And how long does it take to put together a box set like this? Because I imagine you're working on a lot of things simultaneously.
Yes, we wouldn't be able to survive if we were just working on
Right.
one project at a time, because this particular one took 7 years since we started. So basically, it's been a long road to actually get here. And I think all of the box sets, I think the one that took the extensive box sets, I mean, the one that took the least amount of time was Ray Dennis Steckler, but that still took like close to 2 years, I think.
Okay. Now
Mhm.
I'm gonna give you an opportunity to get yourself into some trouble, but you cannot get yourself into some trouble as well. What do you think about Bruce Lee's death? What happened there?
Oh, I think it's a lot more simple than any of the conspiracy theories
Oh,
suggest. I think he took too many a mixed cocktail of pain meds that made his brain swell, and that was it, and so basically he died in his sleep, and that was that. I don't think there was any hit or murder or
it
conspiracy.
wasn't the triads.
I mean, he was over exerting his body quite a bit, as we discussed in the early part of the movie. I mean, he was doing things like electroshock in order to, tense up his muscles. I mean, he was pushing his body to its extremes. So, I think ultimately he ended up with headaches and was taking medication, and he just took too much of the wrong medication.
Oh, okay. Because that lady who he was with, she like married a triad later. I just thought that
Betty
maybe.
Ting Pei, yeah, no, Betty
uh,
Ting Pei. I don't know that she had any involvement with it whatsoever. I mean, obviously he was found at her apartment, but I don't think she was. In my opinion, I don't know that she was involved in his death.
all right, I'm just gonna put it out there that maybe the triads just killed him for his royalties.
But I don't know that there were any royalties at that point. I mean, basically, he was big. He was starting to get big. He was big in Asia at that point, but he wasn't an international star. He was on the verge of being an international star when he died. So I don't know that that would have been smart business to actually kill him for his royalties at that point.
All right, beautiful. Anyways, back to the documentary. The people interviewed are a lot of fun, and I thought the whole, when I heard about this film, it's one of those things I'm just kind of always wondering for like a year what it's going to be like, and then I saw it, and it was good. It was a good time. How do you explain the tone of the project to people if they don't know anything about Bruce Lee or Bruceploitation?
Yeah, I mean, there's see on the surface of it, it's basically, a wild west tale of like just the extremes that exploitation filmmakers will go to get bums in seats. But what was important to me was that I wanted to speak to the actual Bruces themselves and find out their opinion of this phenomenon, because at the time we started this, there was very little in terms of English language interview firsthand material with any of these guys, and so that I could find anyway. So I was like, I want to know what Bruce Lee felt about being Bruce Lee. I want to
Right.
know what became of Dragon Lee. He left the acting part of the industry quite some time ago. So that was kind of the impetus for doing it. And sure enough, they have proper life stories, and some of it is quite poignant and a little sad at times.
Mm.
So but what they achieved, I also wanted to go into, as I often do when I'm documenting the trenches of low budget exploitation filmmaking, is that people do this with passion. They don't do it as a joke. They don't do it to make shitty movies. They don't do it to make trash, as it's so often called.
Right.
They do it to do the best they can with the means that they have, and that to me is a lot more exciting in terms of getting to the finish line than movies with budgets, and movies with studio backing. Basically, this is a bunch of people who have certain skill sets and a certain passion to actually get things done, and this is the case with these kung fu movies.
That's beautiful. I love the passion and embedded in your response. And yeah, I thought it was a lot of fun. So thanks a lot for your time, David. It's always a good time talking to you. Tell
My
people what
pleasure.
you and Severin are up to for the rest of the year, or give a little, 30-second synopsis, I guess.
Oh my goodness. Well, Seven, our me and the team are like absolutely up to our eyeballs in production on so many discs I can't even keep track. Basically, we have another box set next month, but fortunately, it's only a 4-disc box set, so that relatively speaking, that's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
And then a month after that, we have our mid-year sale, which has 9 new releases coming out, including a huge one for us. We're working on restoring the work of a director who's criminally underrated on the disc format as well. And through the rest of the year, we have a countless amount of discs. The best way to keep in to follow what we're doing is to follow Severin Films on social media.
Oh
Uh,
yes.
Facebook, Instagram, whatever your preferred social media is, but we keep all the updates there, as well as all kind of the special offers that you can get by buying from us directly.
Oh yes, and I thoroughly enjoyed the theatrical releases of what you guys did with Opera and Cemetery Man.
Yes, yes. No, very, very proud of our restorations on those two. So,
Oh yeah.
and thanks to AGFA, we managed to get them proper theatrical runs as well. So, as they very much deserve, because they're both Italian masterpieces.
So all right. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.